When it comes to performance cars, there's always a sacrifice you have to be willing to make. Whether it be less room in the back seat for passengers, less room in the back for cargo, and usually you have to be willing to spend a little bit more money. But what if I told you that there's in fact a car out there that has all the performance you'd ever want and the practicality you'd expect from something a lot less fun? This is the 2015 Volvo V60 T6 R Design. But instead of that lengthy title, it is better known as the V60 Sportwagon. Now, if you don't know much about Volvo, they've been making wagons, or estates, for a very, very long time. You may recall some of their old squarey designs like their 740 Turbo back in the 80s. And that, my friends, was an excellent car. Now let's get a couple obvious things out of the way. We are not driving your base level V60. This is your top of the line V60 R Design Platinum, which starts at $54,000. Ours is trimmed out to just over 58. This puppy right here has 325 horsepower, 354 foot-pounds of torque, making it the fastest production wagon Volvo's ever made. That's awesome. It gets its power from a 3-liter turbocharged 6-cylinder engine, and that's made into a 6-speed automatic transmission. New for 2015, they've actually put their first paddles in a production vehicle. So I've got nice little paddles here mounted to the steering wheel that I can activate by simply starting to click them or by pulling my shifter towards myself to put it in sport mode. By putting it in sport mode, the suspension stiffens up as well as the chassis. On top of that, the transmission starts to shift a lot quicker. Gears 1 and 2 will shift 50% faster, and gears 3 to 6 will shift 30% faster than being in normal mode. For 2015, the V60 is now lower to the ground as well as stiffer, which really helps it feel a lot more sporty on the asphalt. The 0 to 60 time has now been shaved down to 6 seconds, and you have to be in sport mode to have that. Not too shabby if I do say so myself. The interior of the V60 R Design is quite stellar. The dash certainly doesn't look too fancy, but it's very simple and looks uncluttered, which really works. All the media and climate controls are all buttons and knobs, which is really nice. It's all center stacked, it's easy to find. And if you haven't seen a Volvo before, it'll look a little different when you first see it, but as soon as you get used to it, it's not too bad. Volvo has always had some of the most comfortable seats that I've ever been in. Now these seats are a little special to the R Design. They have R Design logos on the back, big bolsters, and they're made of 2 different materials. You have a real leather, and you have this fake suede. It's not real suede, and it really isn't doing a very good job of faking it. It's okay to touch, but it just doesn't feel like the quality that suede has. The leather also feels a little thin and a little cheap. But nonetheless, these are comfortable seats. The headrests feel so good up against the neck, and when you're putting your foot in it, it's nice to have a cushy seat behind you to hold you in there. And my second favorite part about this interior is this cluster. It looks properly sporty. It's fully digital, and that says a lot because I don't normally like digital clusters. I find that the pixels sometimes are kind of pixelated and it doesn't look very sharp. This one looks very sharp. Now it really doesn't look like your average cluster from a Volvo. Rather, it kind of looks like something from a Lamborghini or a McLaren. The outside of this V60 Sportwagon is awesome. The rear exhaust and the taillights that wrap around the rear window look delectable. You're certainly not going to be mistaken for driving some exotic car. It still looks like a Volvo. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because Volvo wagons do in fact have some of the best fanboys around. So what's it like to drive the V60 Sportwagon? Well, it's properly awesome. To be able to sit 5 people in here comfortably and their gear, and to be able to put smiles on all their faces with the raw power that this little thing has, that makes for a pretty awesome ride. It's safe, it's comfortable. With the adaptive cruise control, you could go on a long road trip without batting an eyelash. But when there's a sign that says curvy roads ahead on that road trip, you don't have to be shy with this thing. You can go at it full-heartedly. This thing handles the road incredibly well. It's super sticky, and the all-wheel drive system doesn't miss a beat. It certainly doesn't feel like the average Volvo you see on the street. Now, the one small issue I do have is with its transmission. When you're in normal drive mode, it feels fine, it shifts great, it's very quiet. Even when you put it in sport mode, it shifts great. It's a lot quicker and everything feels like it stiffens up. But when you're in sport mode and you decide you want to manually shift through the gears using the paddle shifters on the steering column, well, you have to be willing to wait a little bit to shift. It doesn't shift instantly. It feels like the computer is kind of fighting back a little bit. It doesn't quite want to shift when I do. So this car sits at just under $60,000. That's a pretty expensive car. Mind you, Volvo is a premium car, but it's not just a safe vehicle to put your family in and some cargo for a long trip. This has a serious sporty beat to it. But this V60 Sportwagon is your Swiss Army knife. It has a little bit of everything. So at the end of the day, all you really got to do is ask yourself a couple simple questions. Do you want something that can fit 5 people in it? Do you want something that you can put a lot of gear in? Do you want something that looks good inside and out? And do you want something that has a lot of power and is a lot of fun to drive? Yeah, you do.